hey, I looked at my phone and I thought so-and-so was going to win tonight. Right? And that's what bettors. Hello and welcome to another episode of Behind the Lines, the only sports betting podcast purifying the sports betting industry. How do we do it? Well, we teach you about all the tricks and traps that the sportsbooks try to set and help you navigate this industry so that you can make more money over time, or perhaps at least at the very minimum, lose less. All right, on today's show, we're talking about Apple Sports. We gave it a try. We'll give you a review on that. We've got students trying to pay off their loans by sports betting. We'll talk about that. We were going to answer some common questions for you, perhaps towards the end of the show. And it was a really big weekend at In Play Live. And if you want to see what In Play Live is all about on the inside, we have a promo code for you. That is Behind the Lines, all caps. I'm your host, Shane Mercer. That guy over there, Andrew Pace, founder of In Play Live. And Pace, why don't we just start off? We record this on a Monday and we're coming off a really big weekend. Why don't we kick things off there? What a monster on Saturday.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We broke our single day record for what we post on our tracker, which are the calls that we make. So it's really nice to hit a new high there, and hopefully the members of In Play Live got to see some nice returns.
I think they did. Yeah. 13 units on Saturday. That's really, really solid. And a big shout out to a guy we've had on the show many times, the Golden Goose, Kenny Huber. Man, that guy went off on Saturday. I was looking at that tracker, right? Because as you mentioned, we track everything and it's out there. I was taking a look at it. He did not miss. 7-0 for a profit of 8 units. Kenny alone. Shout out to the Golden Goose. Nice work, buddy.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't think that guy's actually real. Like he's just such a legend. But like, I guess a lot of people on stream didn't know he wasn't on camera, so he's just on audio the whole time. But the reason for that was because he was betting using his Vision Pro. And so he's wagering using his Vision Pro, and Zoom didn't allow for that AI version of him to go on Zoom. He was, I guess he had an issue with that, so he stayed muted the whole day. And then there's a couple times where he came on and you just saw him in the goggles. And the reason why he was using the Vision Pro was because he wasn't at home. So he kind of creates a betting setup inside of the Apple Vision Pro and uses that as his setup. But unfortunately, he left us partway through the day on Saturday because he got motion sick from betting with the Vision Pro all day. So he had a hell of a day, but shows us there's still room for improvement because he only wagered for half of the day because he got sick. So he actually ended up I think like taking some gravel or something and actually sleeping for the rest of the day, and then like woke back up at like 10 or 11 p.m. and missed the second half of the day. But yeah, hell of a day on Saturday and a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome to sort of watch and be a part of and benefit from. And yeah, I can only imagine you got those headsets on for that amount of time. It's not going to be good for you. I don't know personally. I don't think it's something I'd even want to try. I've used those VR goggles before in the past, and yeah, very quickly do I feel disoriented and I start to not feel so good. Headache sets in. It's like no, and that's the last thing I think you'd want while you're trying to bet on sports live. You definitely don't want to feel that way.
Well, I think you can have it so that you can see. It's like you see through which it's not actually that. It's recording your room and then playing it back to you in real time. But he didn't do that. He intentionally set his background as the moon.
Which maybe just a little more disorienting.
Yeah, I'm all for like if he wants to take us to the moon with him, with his wager calls and it sets the moon as the background. But I guess I'm getting at, I don't think that helped with the motion sickness betting throughout the day. So
yeah, and for everybody out there that's not a part of the In Play Live community, and you're thinking, whoa, 13 units, whoa, this guy went 7-0 and 8 units. How did he do it? Well, we're betting on college basketball because guess what? It's March. And college basketball is a huge, huge focus at InPlay Live. And again, if you're interested in joining and learning and seeing what we're doing, you got that promo code that I mentioned off the top of the show, Behind the Lines, all caps. And yeah, it's just that really, really busy time of year. And there we go, Pace. This is back. Second time that we're bringing this back. If you're listening and you're not watching on YouTube, we are bringing up the InPlay Live NCAA conference tournament schedule, along with a tracker that'll show cumulative units won. Pace, tell the people how this works.
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say is this is the schedule of the conference tournaments, and we're shooting this on a Monday. So when you're watching this on Wednesday, already 2 days of conference tournaments will be behind us. Why do I like this, and why do I use it personally? I think that's probably the main question here is, tonight we got a whole series of college basketball games on, but 2 of them are actual conference games. And why is that important? It's because whoever loses these games are most likely out of it'll be their last game of the season, so they won't be in the March Madness tournament. The winners of these tournaments guarantee a spot in the March Madness tournament itself. So all these times are listed in Eastern time, but I know this now. These 2 games right here for tonight, again, we're filming on a Monday. I know that these are elimination games. So from a betting standpoint and a scheduling standpoint, I know that these are games that I don't want to miss. And I think that that's extremely powerful, especially this week where we have some of the games are conference tournaments and some of the games are still regular season. Whereas next week, all of the games will be conference tournaments if we scroll down to that for more prominent conferences like the ACC and the Big 12 and the Big 10. So this is a layout of every single conference tournament game. And you can open up this page. You can sit down with your spouse. You can sit down with your friends. You can sit down with it yourself and go, okay, you can set alarms for when you want to watch these games or wager on them or whatever it is, and actually schedule this next month. And when it comes to March Madness specifically, obviously we had a great guest talking about the tournament on with us last week. I think, these next few weeks are mayhem from a betting standpoint, because you'll see some of these games are starting at 11 a.m. Eastern time. That means that there's games running all the way until tip off here, 11:30 p.m. Eastern. Games running really all day. And if you are a successful sports bettor, you definitely want to be prepared for these next few weeks as these games come through. So this is a great resource to be able to do that. And as Shane alluded to, cumulative units won on the conference tournament will be added. And then the March Madness schedule, once that's all settled and sorted, will be added to this as well. And it's a late start this year. So, in previous years, at this point, the conference tournaments were well underway, if not finished already. And the tournament itself will go well into April this year.
Yeah. I think it starts the week of, or the days are kind of, we get those playing games, I think, on like the 19th, 20th, and then the real tournament, I think, kicks off on the 21st this year. So it's a little bit later than normal. And I'm glad you brought up our guest from last week. If you guys haven't had a chance to listen to that show and you're a big fan of college basketball and you want to learn more, listen to that episode from last week. Go back with Ryan Hammer and the trapezoid of excellence. Super cool what he's got going on there. And again, I'm looking forward to sort of using some of his content as I kind of build my brackets later in the month. But a pretty awesome stuff all around there. And as you mentioned too, looking through that schedule, you can see that things really kind of pick up towards the end of this week. So, this episode coming out on a Wednesday, have a look there. There's a lot of games on Wednesday. Same thing Thursday, and a lot of these are conference games, and they're not necessarily all kind of in the evening. There's a lot of games that take place during the day. So you've got work to do. A lot of people out there got their jobs and stuff like that. So, if you want to find a way to kind of manage it all, just that schedule can really, really help you out as you sort of prioritize what games will matter most and where you might be able to identify the most value.
All you have to do there, guys, helpful. if you're not on watching us, is go to inplaylive.com/NCAA, and that schedule will pop up.
Yeah. All right. Well, as we sort of talk about these things, we talked about the Apple Vision Pro, and we're talking about tools. I guess now's a good time to bring up Apple Sports, which we talked about last week on the show. And you know, they've launched this. I downloaded it. I've taken a look. It's somewhat underwhelming, I think, so far.
Yeah, so like just from like a review standpoint, and why I would use an app like this is to get the fastest information as I possibly can. The I guess the claims to the app sound greater than the actual execution at this stage. So you're running about 5 seconds to 7 seconds behind the books and other apps. So the score is quicker than this right now. One of the things I do really like about the app is just the visuals of it all. I personally have it meshed where you select leagues and not teams.
Yeah.
And it gives me a really nice representation of what I'm going to be betting on that night. And that is really helpful for me. So from the standpoint of organization, if you go into a sports book, you can favorite some things sometimes. But at the end of the day, I like that I can see what games are coming in for any end of game strategies. Using this regardless of the league that they're in. So I've got an NBA game coming in, I've got a college basketball game coming in, I've got an NHL game coming in, and I've got it organized nicely there. That's almost like a nice little cue of what's coming through the pipeline. And also another nice feature of that is as I look at today's schedule and the way that I have it organized is that regardless of the sport, this is my queue of games today, and I can scroll and see the ones that I'm going to be most focused on. So I like the way that it organizes things, but from the standpoint of actually using it once the games are on, it's not the fastest, and I'm still hopeful is what I would say. But for now, I think there's a place for it, but it's not necessarily like your primary app for live information.
Yeah, you know, I kind of using it the exact same way as you are, where I've got my leagues. And then I've got them all sort of sorted out here. And but the thing that I would say that kind of it's like, okay, it's great. Now I've got them all together. I've got everything here, but man, it's a lot. It's a lot. You know, it's like because I've got men's college hoops, I've got women's college hoops, which I've talked about a lot on the show. I'm a big women's college hoops guy. So those alone are a ton of games. And then I add in the NBA and I add in the NHL. And now it's like I've got all these games here. But it does allow me to kind of really kind of look at, say, okay, at this time this game begins, or at this time this slate of games begin. And I know that those games are going to end around such and such time where I will be dialed into them. So in that sense, it's helpful. But monitoring games live, it's not there yet, and it's not something.
Yeah, it feels like almost like a kid's project right now that they did for like a programming class, where it looks really good, but from the standpoint of overall functionality of what we would want as professional bettors, it's a step. It's kind of like another tool you can use, but it's just not there yet.
Yeah.
So hopefully Apple steps it up.
Okay, moving on. There's an article that came out in the Wall Street Journal, and we always want to talk about, coverage of the industry and kind of get into what's happening out there and how people are moving through the industry or what's taking place and kind of, you know, issues that pop up. And there's a couple of things that kind of happened over this past week that are somewhat connected. But I'll start off just by sharing my screen here and bringing up this article that was actually posted in our Discord. And it's in the Wall Street Journal. Kaylin Rohn is the journalist that wrote this, and she kind of profiles a student. But the idea here is students, Hail Mary, play to repay loans, sports bets. So in the U.S., there was some loan forgiveness conversations that were taking place when it came to student loans. And it turns out, hey, guess what? You're going to have to pay all that money that you took out in loans. It is going to happen. And for a lot of students in the U.S., especially, less so in Canada, but it is still very relevant for Canadians because, it still costs a lot of money to go to school in Canada, but it costs a lot more to go to school in the United States. And some of these loans are just massive. And so it starts off, by profiling this one guy who was hoping to pay off his $50,000 student loan debt. He created a whole TikTok to kind of document his journey, as we all do these days, right? A lot of young people posting on social media and they have a plan and it's like, let me share this plan with the world and document my journey. well, he had this whole plan to pay off his student loan, building some monster parlays and that kind of thing. Long story short, guess what? It didn't work. But it highlights this bigger issue of all of these students out there. They're racking up a ton of debt, and that is coinciding now with the emergence and this growing industry of sports betting. And again, we talk a lot about what we see on social media. If you are interested in sports in any way, shape, or form, you are bombarded with sports betting, either through tipsters, influencers. The advertisements are everywhere. So, for a young person out there that is saddled with all of this debt, they're wondering, geez, my my liberal arts degree isn't going to pay off for me over time, and help me pay off this loan that I've got. I've got to come up with a way to do it, and I want to do it fast, right? Everything always wants to be done fast. And so, hey, let's build that parlay, that lotto parlay, and this will be my ticket out of here. And if this one doesn't work, well, then the next one will, or the next one will. And I think I'm glad that the Wall Street Journal is reporting on this, because it does highlight this big issue that, hey, people are going to use sports betting as sort of a quick fix solution. And Pace, you and I kind of know that there's nothing quick about the success that comes from sports betting. It's a long-term thing, and it's certainly not going to come, or is very, very unlikely to come from those big lotto parlays.
Yeah, man. I mean, sometimes when I see stuff like this, I'm just like, God, we're so fucked. I just am like, if this is how people are thinking. This is how, we've sort of been almost manipulated into, acting with not even our money. It's not even their student loans. It's not even your money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. Like I think that, the sports books have been really successful with these ads, and what they have painted. And I know that we, are kind of on the other side of it and exposing some of that stuff and showing what's going on and all that. And then you see this and it's not a one-off. Like,
no,
I'm sure there's tons of students gambling on sports and doing it in a way that is for the big quick hit. And what's crazy about that style of betting is that people think they're either right or wrong. Like, you got the game wrong, you were wrong, versus the expected value of the wager itself. And yeah, it's, gosh, I think, you see stuff like that and you're just like, we're fucked. Like, what is this going to do long-term, to people that are engaging in this space, in this capacity? Like, are they going to go into debt levels or have they already gone into debt levels that you deal with now for the rest of your life?
And that's the thing, right? They're already strapped with a ton of debt because of their education and how much it costs. And then they're going to bury themselves even further. It's so dangerous.
Yeah. And also too, like, in theory, that's someone that's accepted into a university and that's the way they're thinking, and it's almost like they think at the back of their mind, it's like, well, I will hit one eventually, or I'll get a real job that pays enough for me to deal with this. I can remember, like, working in jobs where you thought to yourself, if I just got this raise, I'd be okay. And then you get the raise, and that's not even short-term thinking. That's actually like working towards something. You get the raise and then you see what it is net of tax, and you're like, there is no difference to my life whatsoever, let alone factoring in inflation. So the fact that people actually think that you can do it this way long term is it's scary. And I think there's definitely a culture of promoting this, but that's also further solidified by the players themselves. Like, just keep going, the next one's around the corner, all that kind of stuff. And you kind of said, Shane, you're like, oh, we know that sports betting success isn't quick. What I can say that is quick is, from my personal standpoint and my personal journey, is knowing what my financial struggles were and knowing where I was in that space, and not never, but next to never really having $2,000 of actual cash. So I don't mean cash in hand. I mean, not having credit card debt and having positive $2,000 sitting in my bank account. I'm not saying that was never the case, but it was pretty much close to never the case. And from a betting standpoint, all of a sudden going, wow, I have $2,000. Wow, I have $5,000. Wow, I have $20,000. I could have never dreamt of having this much money at once without having debt. And that might not be overnight, but it was over the course of a month or a season, more, a quarter, where you go, holy shit, this is working. And that in and of itself is motivating. So it's not getting rich quick overnight, but it is hopefully, if done properly and successfully, something that you do really see this positive impact. So from last episode until now, essentially, I did a reset, and this can give people some perspective on the success that can occur within sports betting. And it is, I have to be 100% clear, it is completely different from what we're describing from like these kill off the student loans and hit a parlay, right? It's high volume with a low edge. So, you're looking at ROIs sometimes of 10% or less, but with that volume, seeing that actually compound over time and how powerful that is, right? So when I did a reset, before I did it, my full unit wager was just under $10,000 before I did it, and I was like, I just want to get back to a place where I start small and ramp up. So for a lot of people, this number won't be small, but I deposited $20,000 into probably about 6 to 8 sports books, approximately $2,000 to $3,000 at a time. A couple of the books still had balances in them. But brought everything down to more or less $2,000 per book. Like I said, 2,000 to 3,000, so a little bit more. And yeah, over the course of the week, I grew that to $50,000. So there were some wagers in there that were higher than 2.5% of my bankroll. There was a 2-unit call that I made last week that I personally had about 5% on, but I scaled in real time. So I got to some wagers where once I was approaching that $40,000 range, 1% of that $40,000 is $400. Well, I was betting about 2.5% to 3% as my unit size. So I was getting in, a thousand or so. And then, like I said, there was a 2-unit call, and then Kenny had a 1.5-unit call. So on those bets, I was probably closer to, 5 or 6%, but, which is high, but I'm comfortable with that risk because I have a lot more than that $20,000 behind me. But yeah, a very short time frame, and approximately $30,000 of profit, and like 150% X on my bankroll. I can't continue to do that once I hit I'd say about the 200,000 mark. Accounts will have limited me by then, if not already have. I won't be able to spin in 2.5% wagers once you're hitting like, I'd say $2,000 spins is where you really start to get resistance. You might have to put in like $400 or $500 spins at 4 different sites. So you really start to feel resistance with your wager size. And that's where kind of once I get into that $200,000 range, I'm really comfortable with my unit size being 1% because I know I'm going to be able to get that $2,000 wager in. But that's a journey that we can follow on the show, that I can continue to provide updates on as we progress through the month if time permits. But there's a whole other approach to this betting industry that isn't trying to pay off your student loans overnight. It is, and again, I'm taking a really great week that we just had at In Play Live. I could just as well come here and have lost those funds, especially with how aggressive I was being. But there's a disciplined approach with positive expected value that can provide great results over the long term. And it isn't money overnight. Like Saturday, I was live streaming and placed close to 40 bets, and it was a full day. It was 12 hours straight. So as you know, Shane, it takes time, but it can be done.
Yeah, it takes time, takes effort, takes discipline. You're in a bit of a unique situation in the sense that You've done this. You've done this numerous times. You've done that growth numerous times in the past. You
Mhm.
also have the strategies behind you, right? You already know how you're going to be deploying that bankroll, where and when, what that EV looks like in each individual wager, what that expected edge is, and it's interesting, Pace. We were going to be doing a lot of questions or sort of commonly searched questions on the show, and maybe knocking off a couple of them. And we were sort of looking at some of these questions, and there were sort of things like, can you make money off sports betting? Well, yeah, we exist because we can make money off sports betting. The whole reason this show is on is because we know we can make money off sports betting and how to go about it. And it's not the way that the industry tells you to go about it. There's a whole other way behind it. And some of the other things are like, oh, how do sports books, make money and that kind of stuff, which we've covered pretty extensively. And basically, they make money off you losing, long term. But you've referenced something a couple of times, and I'm not sure that anyone searches this, and this is part of the problem out there. But anywhere on that list of questions did I see, what does positive EV mean? Right? No, I didn't see that on the list of commonly searched questions when it comes to sports betting. That might be one of the most fundamental questions out there that you need to learn and get answers to, is what does that
Yeah.
mean? Right. And I think that's something that perhaps isn't talked about enough. And as you were sort of going through your answer there, I'm like, I wonder how many people out there listening right now, at least within the In-Play Live community. I know many people already know it, but we have a lot of people who might not be part of the community, or they're sort of newer to sports betting, or they're recreational long-term bettors, and they haven't given much thought to what does that mean when people talk about EV and positive EV. Do you want to give people a brief explanation?
Yeah, well, I think whether it's like you talk about expected value or ROI. So, I mean, that's return on your investment. The expected value of a wager is if you take that wager, regardless of the outcome, what you could expect in edge over the house, or what they have over you. So a really good example of that is that when it comes to sports betting ads and sports bets in general, is there's vigorish, which is the cut that the house takes, which then implies that you're going to have an expected loss over time, right? So the real simple analogy is you take a coin, you flip it with a buddy, and we each bet $100, and I bet on heads, Shane, and you bet on tails, and it lands on heads, and you gave me $200 back, right? So that's a fair wager. There's no vig or no commission. Whereas if we were to say, hey, let's bring a buddy in over here, and he's going to charge us 5%, and if whoever wins, they're not going to return the $200. They're going to get $190 back. That's a spread, and how the sports books obviously make money over the course of time. So if we take that example of heads and tails, and we keep flipping that coin over time, and there is no commission involved. In theory, we have a fair wager that's going to break us even over time. So the expected value is right at even. It's zero.
It's zero.
But if you bring that commission into the equation, our expected value on flipping that coin, it actually is an expected loss, right? So we're going to see a 5% depreciation. We flip that thing 10,000 times. Every $100 that we spend, in theory, whether we won or lost, we're going to be losing $5 on every flip, regardless of which one of us actually won, right? So when it comes to a ROI, or a positive expected value, it's what we expect to return on that wager with volume applied. So if you have, a 5% ROI on a particular strategy that you now have a decent sample size on, you're comfortable placing that wager and having it head lost, because you know that if you do continue to do that and are disciplined with how you're deploying your money, that of course, every $100 you spend there, you're actually making the $5. So really, when it comes to expected value, is how much you're going to be making per dollar spent, on average, based on the particular wager or strategy that you're taking. And when it comes to the student loan story and all this bullshit, the sports books are not letting you know that the expected value on your parlay is actually the worst wager you could possibly place. It's the expected loss is massive, higher than any other bet that you could place.
Yeah.
And every leg you add. So what do people do? Oh, I'm just going to add this leg. It's free money. I'm just going to add that leg. It's free money. Oh, these guys are a lock. I'll put them on and they can't lose. Every single time you add one of those other positions onto your parlay or onto any wager, you just increase the expected loss of that wager with each click. So even straight bets have an expected loss. But of course, with the dynamic lines and the nature of sports betting, that isn't the case for all of the wagers being offered, which is why winning players get limited, which is why people like myself and now you, Shane, exist, because you have profited over the course of time with having a positive expected value for, I'm not going to say all, but most of the wagers that you place.
Yeah. And learning and knowing what that positive expected value is takes time, right? It takes time to sort of figure it out. Well, if I'm going to put myself in the shoes of an average recreational sports bettor, and I'm looking at tonight's slate of NBA games, I'm looking at it going, okay, well, Pace told me that I need to bet on something that has positive expected value. How do I know what that positive expected value is, right? Well, you're not going to know, right? If you're just an average recreational sports bettor, you're looking at the slate, you're not going to know that, team A tonight's spread has a positive expected value just like that. You're not going to sort of be able to kind of just make it up in your mind, or maybe you think or have a feeling about it, right? You need to dig into something.
What you should know then is, if that's what you don't know, then you know that it's a negative expected value.
It's probably a negative expected value.
A negative, right? ROI long term.
Yeah.
And then if you know that, all of a sudden you just don't necessarily click it.
That's
and yeah. I find that myself, Shane. So like, give day to day, and obviously we're a lot of these professional sports bettors, all they're looking for is that pregame value. And trying to identify those opportunities that you just referenced. But for me, I'm not doing that. So when I look at a slate for what's to come before it's actually on, I will be like, wow, the Clippers, hey? Clippers, underdogs. Oh, geez, this looks like a good opportunity. And me saying that reminds me to not bet it. You're like, it's like, all right, Andrew, keep an eye on it live, settle down, do not bet this because you are making a bad bet.
Yeah. Yeah. And over time you're able to recognize that and realize that. But I think, obviously a lot of average recreational bettors out there just don't think that way. They're not thinking about it. They're going down the tunnel of, oh, the Clippers look like dogs tonight. No way. No. And they are placing the bet. Right. And the only way you really kind of learn to know where that positive EV is by deploying a strategy that you've tracked and tested over time. And you can go back and look at those results and say, oh yeah, hey, this specific strategy in this specific scenario provides a, 25% edge or something like that. Right. And if you don't, when you know that, man, does it ever make things easy to be like, I'm going to hit this, or I'm going to bet this. Yep. And you're waiting for that moment to strike. But if you don't know it, then you're kind of just sort of lost in the wilderness in a lot of ways.
Yep, for sure. And I think one of the things in line with what you just referenced is data. So we've talked about tracking on this show quite a bit, but when it comes to data, that can be used in so many different ways. And a lot of these betting apps, like what we're referring to with the Apple Sports app, they are providing us with data.
Yeah.
So at a minimum, like if you're a sports bettor and you're just going to go click on a game, so I'm going to go to Wednesday night since that's when this is actually playing. The Magic are playing the Wizards. Basic data. You have the record of the Orlando Magic. You have their position in the standings, and potentially the position itself can give you a really good indication of what that team's goals might be for the remainder of the season. So the Magic are 6th in the East. Do they want to win games and make the playoffs? Yes. That seems like an obvious question, but their opponent, the Washington Wizards, they don't even have 10 wins this season. They're 14th in the East. Are they hell-bent and overly focused on winning the game against the Magic? Do they want to win? Sure, but there could be other motivations in there, from keeping stars healthy to draft picks down the road, and the list goes on and on. But then if you scroll down, and this is just on the score, team stats per game. So they have points per game and where they rank on both sides, their pace, so how quickly they're playing, field goal percentages, and I'm not going to go through everything. I'm just going to say the list goes on and on and on. So for you as a bettor, there are tools, resources, and information available to you that allows for you to start doing some potential statistic modeling that can do some, not predictions, some theoretical value based on the lines that are listed. And what you're going to quickly find is, if your model is in any way, shape, or form accurate, you're going to find yourself continually landing on what the spreads are. So you're going to go, oh, I've got them pegged as 7-point favorites tonight. And then you go look at the line and you're like, damn, it's -7.
Yeah.
So you're flipping a coin that's charging you that commission. But all of a sudden you might go, hey, the line's moved, injuries aren't a factor. And bang, I've found a game where I think the line should be closer to about -5. And here it is at 7. And you go, okay, I now believe that I've identified some positive expected value. I'm going to place a wager. You want to place that wager responsibly, 1 to 3% of your bankroll max, right? Anything higher than that could be considered overbetting. I know I just went against some of the things that I said when I said I had a couple 5% bets last week, but when it comes to doing that, now you see you might win that game, you might lose that game. But when you track the results over the course of time and you have hundreds of those behind you, you can see whether or not that is coming into fruition for you over the long term. And if the answer is yes, it is, great job. Keep going, scale up when and where applicable. But if the answer is no, you have to continually tweak and adjust to turn that into a yes, or simply that might have been the knowledge for you to move on from what it is that you're doing, so that you go, hey, this was fun, but this experiment just isn't working for me. And no one is really taking that approach in this industry. No one.
No, nobody is. And, you touched on a lot of great things there. One is that there are tools out there to help you. We've even brought some people on and talked about some of those tools here on this podcast. We'll continue to do that into the future to sort of, just shed light on what's out there and how you can use it to identify that positive expected value. But at no point along the way, Pace, did you say, hey, I looked at my phone and I thought so-and-so was going to win tonight. Right? And that's what bettors do, right? They look at their thing and think, I think so-and-so is going to win, or I think so-and-so is going to cover the spread. No, right? You got to look at your phone and say, I think that there's positive expected value in this selection.
Well, Shane, you said think, and people don't say think. At least I
You're
think
right.
they're going to win. That has room for, there's a margin of error.
Yeah, there's some doubt there.
I thought they would, but they didn't.
Yeah.
Right? It's when you say they will win tonight, that's where things get really scary.
Yeah.
Right.
And then that's usually what it is. I think they will. Right. That's the phrasing that goes, and that's sort of the thinking process, right? I think they will. And it's the wrong path to go down. Now, you also talked about the fact that the sports books don't tell you these things, and you'll never see a sports book advertising its tools to identify positive expected value, or at least most sports books won't. And they don't feature that in their ads. What they do feature in their ads are a lot of celebrities, and we've seen plenty of that. But guess what? In Ontario, they've now banned celebrities in sports betting ads. Paste, you were on the news, CTV News, talking to an old coworker of mine, Morella Fernandez, about exactly that. What are your thoughts on the ban itself? And, do you think it's going to really kind of change the way people in Ontario at least see these ads?
Well, the ban, so when it comes to the celebrities being on the ads, we've obviously played tons of them on this show. And then obviously we did the SNL skit last week, and like, there's the Tom Brady Vince Vaughn ad that was like super popular, and it's like everyone can play except Tom Brady. And we called that out. We're like, that's total BS, and why obviously. But I mean, I am a big Tom Brady fan, but regardless of whether I'm a fan of the person or not, like I'm not sitting here telling you I'm a big Austin Matthews fan, but I know who he is, and I'm like, oh, it's Austin Matthews. Like that in and of itself draws attention to the ad. Now with the Brady skit, we were both laughing when we played it, Shane. Like we were smiling, we were laughing. Like they're creative, they're well done. But what these ads also do is they tap into the following of that person and provide instant trust. So outside of the betting industry, if Michael Jordan were to endorse something, which I know he's a pretty quiet behind the scenes guy, but it would be a big deal. And if you're a big Michael Jordan fan, your first thought might be, I have to get my hands on that, or a pair of those, or whatever it is. So you tap into the fans and following of that person, and you actually provide trust to that person. So in the case of, say, an Austin Matthews, you do have a lot of the younger generation who think he is quite literally God, and they see what he's doing and they go, oh, I can't wait to do that as well. If Austin Matthews supports that, so do I. Right. So it's impactful. But I think just, when it comes to any type of advertising, companies do it because they are getting an expected value. They're getting an ROI on their ads. Right. And that's why it is done. So I guess from the standpoint of Ontario actually diving in here and taking some action, I personally think it's a little bit ridiculous. I think that the teams and the leagues and the broadcasts and all that are still promoting sports betting. Why can't the celebrities, like, why are they being the ones specifically that are being told that they can't when everyone else can? From that standpoint, I think it's stupid. But from the standpoint of some action actually being taken by a regulator. So one of the things that we saw with the launch of Ohio, when Ohio was legalized, is they're like, you cannot use that risk-free bet. You cannot talk about that anymore. That is misleading, and that cannot happen in Ohio. I was like, shit, that's cool. Someone's actually doing something based on what's going on in other states. So we're seeing some action. So what does that mean for us, like us and our listeners? Well, keep speaking up about the industry and keep going to the regulator about what's happened to you at the sports books. We saw Gary Bettman and his reaction to DraftKings limiting players. He had no clue.
None.
So the reporter that asked him that, he created awareness. Where does that go from here? I don't know. Yeah. But some of the stuff that is going on, these celebrities, these leagues, these broadcasts, these people giving betting advice on sites that don't have successful betting credentials themselves to be giving that advice, you are going to have to go to bed and look yourself in the mirror. And when you see the student loan story and all that, you go, I created a part of that. I am a part of the problem when it comes to this industry. So for the people that succeed in the industry and want it to be here, I want it to be here, but I want it to be done in a different way so that people that go and make a bet like this to pay off their student loans at least know that what they did was stupid and didn't actually think it was a viable solution to their problem. So just keep speaking out and speaking up, and then we will hopefully start to see more and more change.
Yeah, and then that's all we can do is keep talking about it and sort of, keep promoting these sort of same ideals and values when it comes to this space, and just sort of keep calling out the stuff that isn't in line with that. And another show out there doing that, and we are going to have the host of that show on next week, is called Circles Off, presented by a sportsbook called Pinnacle. If you haven't heard about it, definitely check it out, because they are a sportsbook that doesn't limit winners. And, they're one of the few out there that is sort of operating a more level playing field. They also offer tools on the sports book to help you. Real tools like arbitrage calculators and stuff like that. And so we're going to have the host Rob Pizzola on next week. He's the host of Circles Off, and we'll be talking a lot about where he thinks some of the issues are in the industry as well. And they kind of do that thing on their show. But really, really excited to have somebody on from that sports book as well, or at least aligned with that sports book. And I also just want to mention, I mentioned this in our Discord pace, but we are in March. And guess what? Pinnacle offers both men's and women's college basketball live lines. So there are of now, they've been offering the men's stuff for quite a bit, and they've expanded that a little bit. But over the weekend, I saw them roll out the women's college basketball lines. Very, very excited about that. So for all of you out there that know why I'm excited about that, and chances are you're part of the In Play Live community, but just know Pinnacle women's college basketball out there, you won't get limited. So really, really excited about that. Really excited to have Rob on the show next week, and happy to chat with him maybe a little. We might touch on a little bit of college basketball next week, I think. Hey, Pace, would it probably?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a big topic right now and something that's occupying a lot of our time. So I could see that happening.
Yeah. All right. Well, till next week. And for everybody out there, all of you sports bettors listening around the world, till next week, keep beating those books. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Lines. Remember to like, download, and subscribe. We are on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Have a betting story or want to be featured on our podcast? Drop a note in the comments below. And if you want to join In Play Live, use promo code Behind the Lines.